A coffee cup slipped from her fingers and cracked against the kitchen floor. She didn't move to clean it. She just stood there, staring at the broken pieces near her bare feet. Her hand stayed pressed flat against the counter, like she needed it to keep her standing. A man in the doorway watched her without speaking. He did not rush forward. He did not ask if she was all right. He waited, and then, in a voice so small it barely carried across the room, she said the words she had been carrying inside her for 30 years. "I don't think anyone could love me." The cup stayed broken on the floor between them. Her name was Eleanor Hayes. She was 62 years old. What that quiet man in the doorway said next would unravel 3 decades of evidence she had stacked against herself. "Stay with me on this one." The cup had been her mother's. That was the first thing she would have said if Daniel had asked. But Daniel did not ask. He moved into the kitchen quietly, the way he moved through everything. 64 years old. A widower for the last 2 years. He had been staying in the guest house at the back of her property for almost 3 months now, ever since the funeral. Her brother had been his closest friend for 40 years. When her brother died, Daniel had come for the service. After the service, he had not gone home. He had simply asked if he could stay a while, and Eleanor, exhausted past the point of polite refusals, had said yes. He had not asked for anything since. He crouched down beside the broken cup and began picking up the pieces. He did not say anything about her words. He did not look at her face. He just gathered the ceramic and set it carefully on a kitchen towel. "I'll fix this," he said. Eleanor laughed. It was not a real laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when a person has been holding something in for too long and the muscles around the mouth do not remember the difference anymore. "You can't fix that," she said. "It's gone." Daniel stood up slowly. He folded the towel over the broken pieces. Then he turned and looked at her, and his eyes were calm in a way that made her uncomfortable, because she had stopped expecting anyone to look at her without hurry or judgment a very long time ago. "I wasn't talking about the cup," he said. She stared at him. "You said something just now," he continued, "and I want you to know I heard you. I am not going to argue with you about it. I am not going to tell you that you are wrong. I am not going to list reasons why you should feel different. I know how that goes. You have heard all of that before, and none of it took." Eleanor did not answer. Her throat felt tight. "But I am going to prove you wrong," Daniel said. "Not with words, just by being here. You can watch me, and if I do not keep the promise, you can tell me to leave." She wanted to say something cutting. She wanted to say, "You don't know me, Daniel. You think you know me because you knew my brother, but you don't." She wanted to say, "A promise like that is the kind of thing people say at funerals and forget by morning." But she did not say any of it. She just nodded once, the smallest possible nod, and walked out of the kitchen. That night, after Daniel had gone back to the guest house, Eleanor took down a notebook from the top shelf of her bedroom closet. It was a plain black notebook, the kind a person might use to keep track of bills. But Eleanor had not used it for bills. She had been using it for something else entirely. The first entry was from 8 years ago, the day her husband left. She had written one sentence at the top of the page. He said, "I am easy to forget." Below it, she had written the date. She had kept writing in it ever since. Not every day. Sometimes weeks would pass. But whenever a piece of evidence came her way, a missed birthday, a forgotten call, a kindness that turned out to be polite obligation, she would open the notebook and write it down. The day her daughter Margaret had said the words "I have to go now" in that flat, distant tone for the 3rd call in a row. The day a woman at the grocery store had looked at her and looked away. The day her sister had stopped returning her messages without ever saying why. It was a long list. It was a careful list. Eleanor had built it the way a lawyer builds a case file. Every entry dated. Every entry undeniable. She did not show it to anyone. She did not write in it to feel sorry for herself. She wrote in it because she wanted, more than anything, to be honest with herself about what the evidence showed. And the evidence was clear. The evidence had been clear for years. She sat on the edge of her bed with the notebook open in her lap. She read through a few of the recent entries. Then she picked up her pen and began to write. Tonight he said he would prove me wrong. I do not believe him, but I am writing this down so that, when he stops trying, I will have a record of when it began and when it ended. She closed the notebook and put it back on the shelf. Outside her window, the light was still on in the guest house. The next morning the cup sat on the kitchen counter, reassembled. Not perfect. The cracks still showed. But Daniel had glued each piece back into place, slowly and carefully, and the cup held water again. Eleanor stood in front of it for a long time. She did not say thank you. She could not exactly. The words felt too small for what the cup was now, and too big for what it had been. She made her tea. She drank it standing up. Daniel did not mention the cup. He came in, said good morning, poured himself coffee from the pot she had made, and sat down at the table with a book. He did not look at her with expectation. He did not wait for her to acknowledge what he had done. He just read. This was how the next few weeks went. He learned how she took her tea. Strong, no sugar, a splash of milk. He stopped asking after the second day. He just made it the way she liked it whenever he made tea for himself. He knew the date her mother had died. He did not bring it up. But on the morning of the anniversary, he picked a small bunch of wildflowers from the field behind the property and put them in a glass on the kitchen counter. He did not say what they were for. Eleanor walked into the kitchen, saw them, and stopped breathing for a moment. He fixed the back gate that had been hanging loose for 2 years. He did not ask if she wanted it fixed. He just fixed it. He noticed when she had not eaten and made soup without comment. He noticed when she could not sleep and left the porch light on so she would have somewhere to walk in the dark. He noticed when she went quiet, and instead of asking her what was wrong, he sat in the same room and read, so that she would not be alone in the silence. None of it was loud. None of it was dramatic. There were no speeches. There were no declarations. Eleanor kept watching for the moment Daniel would slip. The moment he would say something to remind her this was a performance, or a debt he was paying off for her brother's sake. The moment never came. She wrote in the notebook anyway. Day 12. He fixed the gate. Day 15. He brought wildflowers. Probably wanted something. Day 22. Still here. She wrote them down because she did not trust herself to remember them honestly. She was certain the evidence would shift. It always shifted. People started kind and ended otherwise. That was the pattern. She had 30 years of pattern. But the days kept piling up, and the pattern did not shift. On the 28th day, Daniel asked her to sit down with him at the kitchen table. There was a folder in front of him. A brown folder, the kind that holds papers in a thin metal clip. He slid it across to her without speaking. "What is this?" she said. "Letters," he said. "From your brother. He wrote to me for about 30 years. I kept them. I thought you should have them." Eleanor's hand did not move toward the folder. "I don't want to read them," she said. "You don't have to read all of them," Daniel said. "Just one. The one on top. He wrote that one about 8 years ago, right after your divorce. I marked the part 1 want you to see." Eleanor sat very still. She had not cried at her brother's funeral. She had not cried since. There were tears that lived somewhere in her chest that she had decided, a long time ago, did not have permission to come out. She had built her life around not letting them out. The notebook was part of that, in a way. The notebook was a place where the grief could be filed and contained. She opened the folder. The letter was 3 pages long. Her brother's handwriting was crowded and slanted, the way it had always been. The passage Daniel had marked was halfway down the second page. She read it once. Then she read it again. "You asked about Eleanor. I do not know how to answer that. She is the best of us, and she does not know it. She is the one who took care of our father when he was dying and never asked for help. She is the one who calls me every Sunday even when I forget to call her back. She is the kindest person I have ever known, Daniel, and she has been treated all her life like she is the easiest one to overlook. I do not know how to make her see herself. I have tried. She does not believe me. I think she has decided somewhere along the way that the people who say good things about her are simply being polite. Eleanor set the letter down. She did not say anything for a long time. Daniel did not say anything either. He just got up and put the kettle on. The water came to a boil. He made her tea the way she liked it. He set it down in front of her. She wrapped both hands around the cup. She did not drink. She just held it. The afternoon light came in through the kitchen window. Outside, the field behind the house was very quiet. A bird called once and then was still. Eleanor sat with the warm cup in her hands and looked at her brother's letter. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt something that was not the weight she carried. It was small. It was uncertain. It was almost like the very edge of relief. Maybe, she thought. Maybe. She did not say it out loud. She did not need to. She just sat there, with the tea warming her hands, and let the kitchen be quiet. The phone rang. Eleanor jumped. She had forgotten the phone could ring. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The cup of tea was still warm in her hands. Daniel was at the sink with his back to her. She set the cup down and picked up the phone. "Mom," her daughter said. Eleanor's whole body went still. Margaret had not called her in 3 months. The last time she had called, it had been to ask if Eleanor could mail back an old photograph. Not to say hello. Not to ask how she was. "Margaret," Eleanor said, "Dad is dying." Margaret's voice was flat in the way Eleanor remembered. "He has maybe a week. He is asking for you. He wants to see you before he goes." Eleanor said nothing. "I told him I would call," Margaret said. "I am calling. That is all I am doing. You can do whatever you want with it." The line went quiet. "Margaret," Eleanor said. "What?" "I am not going to come." There was a pause. Then Margaret made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a breath of disgust. "That is what I told him you would say." The line went dead. Eleanor sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. Then she put it down very carefully, as if it might break. Daniel had turned around. He was not asking. He was just waiting. "My husband is dying," Eleanor said. The word husband caught in her throat. He had not been her husband for 8 years. "My ex-husband, Robert. He wants to see me." Daniel nodded slowly. "I am not going to go," Eleanor said. She started to explain. She did not mean to. She had not spoken about Robert in years. But once she started talking, she could not stop. She told Daniel things she had never told anyone. The way Robert had begun, in the last few years of their marriage, to correct her in front of other people. The way he had stopped looking at her when she walked into a room. The way he had told her, the night he left, that she was easy to forget. That sentence. That exact sentence. He had said it the way a person says something they have been rehearsing. She told Daniel that Margaret had taken her father's side. Not openly. Just quietly. Just by spending Christmas with him every year and visiting Eleanor only on the in-between days. Just by saying "I have to go now" in that flat tone. She told Daniel that she did not blame Margaret. That she understood. That she would have done the same if she had been the daughter. She told Daniel everything, and Daniel did not interrupt her once. When she was finished, she was very tired. She put her head in her hands. "Eleanor," Daniel said. She did not look up. "I am going to drive there," Daniel said. "I want to see him." She did look up then. "What?" she said. "You don't have to go," Daniel said. "I am not asking you to. I am telling you what I am doing. I will be back tomorrow." "Daniel," she said. "Why?" He did not answer that. He just stood up, picked up his keys from the bowl by the door, and put his coat on. He walked over to her. He did not touch her. He just stood close. "You don't have to do anything," he said. "You don't have to call anyone. You don't have to decide anything. Just stay here tonight, and I will be back tomorrow." He left. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table for a long time after the door closed. If you are still with me on this story, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. I make these for the people who stay. This is where the story turns. She did not sleep that night. She walked through the house slowly, room by room, the way a person walks through a house she might be losing. She did not write in the notebook. She did not know what to write. Daniel came back the next afternoon. He looked tired. He came in through the kitchen door and put his keys back in the bowl. He sat down at the table. "He is gone," he said. "He died this morning." Margaret was with him. Eleanor felt nothing. Then she felt something. Then she felt nothing again. "What did you say to him?" she asked. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I told him who you really are," he said. "I sat by his bed, and I told him every single thing I have noticed about you in the last 3 months. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse him of anything. I just told him. And when I was done, he was quiet for a long time. And then he told me something." Eleanor waited. "He told me he had lied to Margaret for years," Daniel said. "About why he left. About what kind of woman you were. He told me he wanted to fix it before he died. He asked me to tell her. I told him no. I told him he had to tell her himself." "And did he?" Eleanor said. "Yes," Daniel said. "She was there. She heard it." Eleanor did not speak. "She is driving here," Daniel said. "She will be here tonight." Eleanor stood up from the table. She walked to the window. Outside, the field was the color of dry grass in the late afternoon sun. She did not turn around. "I do not want to see her," she said. "I know," Daniel said. "But she is coming anyway." Margaret arrived after dark. Eleanor heard the car in the driveway and did not move from her chair. Daniel went to the door. He let Margaret in. He did not hug her. He just stepped aside. Margaret walked into the kitchen. She was 41 years old. She had her father's mouth and her mother's eyes. Eleanor had not seen her since Easter. "Mom," Margaret said. Eleanor looked at her. "I do not know what to say," Margaret said. She did not sit down. She stood in the middle of the kitchen with her hands at her sides. "Dad told me, before he died. He told me everything." Eleanor said nothing. "I have been angry at you my whole life," Margaret said. "For things you did not do. I built it up in my head. I made you the reason for things. I told myself stories. I am sorry." Eleanor watched her daughter's face. "I do not want your apology," Eleanor said. Margaret flinched. "That is not what I mean," Eleanor said. "I mean that I do not want it the way you are giving it. I do not want you to come here because your father told you the truth on his deathbed. I do not want you to be sorry because you found out something new. I wanted you, for 30 years, to look at me and see me. You did not. That is not a thing an apology fixes." "Mom," Margaret said. Her voice cracked. "I am not finished," Eleanor said. She was surprised by how steady her own voice was. "I am not finished, Margaret. You think I do not know what I have been. You think your father was the only one who had a story about me. I had a story about me too. I had a notebook full of it. I have a notebook full of it. And the notebook is right. Most of it is right. Your father was cruel for years. You were distant for years. My sister stopped speaking to me. The evidence is real. You cannot come in here tonight and tell me that the evidence is not real." Margaret was crying now. She did not bother to hide it. "Mom," she said. "I know." Eleanor closed her eyes. That was when Daniel spoke. He had been standing by the door the whole time. He had not interrupted. He had not stepped between them. Now he walked into the kitchen and sat down at the table. He looked at Eleanor, not at Margaret. "Eleanor," he said, "I am not going to ask you to believe what Robert said. I would not believe it either if I were you. He had 30 years to say it and he waited until he was dying. That is not enough." Eleanor opened her eyes. And I am not going to ask you to forgive Margaret tonight, Daniel said. That is between the two of you. That is not mine. He paused. But I am going to ask you to do one thing, he said. Just one. I am going to ask you to look at the last 90 days. Not the last 30 years. The last 90 days. Eleanor did not speak. 90 days ago, Daniel said, I came here for your brother's funeral. I was a widower. I had nowhere to be. I had no one waiting for me. You took me in. You did not ask why I wanted to stay. You did not ask how long. You just gave me a key and showed me where the towels were, and you let me grieve in my own way without watching me. He kept his voice quiet. 60 days ago, the stray cat in the field. The orange one. You started feeding it. It scratched you the second day. You kept feeding it. You buy the expensive food for it because the cheap food made it sick. You do not tell anyone you do this. 40 days ago, when I told you my wife's name in passing, you wrote it down somewhere. I do not know where. But 3 weeks later, on what would have been her birthday, you said her name out loud to me at breakfast. My own daughter forgot her mother's birthday this year. You remembered the birthday of a woman you never met. Eleanor was very still. Every morning since I have lived here, Daniel said, you put 2 coffee cups out on the counter. One for you. One for your brother. He has been dead for almost 4 months. You still put the cup out. You wash it at the end of the day. You put it out again. You have never said why. A small sound came out of Eleanor's throat. She put her hand over her mouth. Eleanor, Daniel said, I am not making any of this up. These are not pretty things I am saying to make you feel better. These are things that happened. I wrote them down too. He reached into his shirt pocket and put a folded piece of paper on the table. This is my notebook, he said. It is 1 page. I started it the day you said you did not think anyone could love you. I have been writing down things ever since. I did not show it to you because I did not want you to perform. I wanted you to be yourself. And the things I wrote down are evidence. They are dated. They are real. They are not opinions. He pushed the paper across the table. You have your case, he said. I have mine. I am not asking you to throw your case out. I am asking you to read mine and decide for yourself which one is true. Eleanor did not pick up the paper. She looked at her daughter. Margaret was standing very still, crying without sound. Eleanor reached out and picked up the paper. She unfolded it. She read it. She read it twice. And then, for the first time in 8 years, Eleanor Hayes put her head down on the kitchen table and cried. 3 weeks passed. Margaret stayed 2 nights, then went home, then came back the next weekend. She came back the weekend after that. She did not say much. She helped Eleanor clean out the garage. She made breakfast on Sunday mornings. She brought her own coffee mug and left it in the kitchen on purpose so that she would have to come back to use it. Eleanor did not know what to do with this. She let it happen. That was all she could manage at first. She let it happen. Daniel kept doing what he had been doing. The cat in the field had a name now. Margaret had named it Apricot. The cat tolerated Eleanor and only Eleanor. It bit everyone else. The cup with the cracks in it sat on the kitchen windowsill. Eleanor used it every morning for her tea. The cracks held. They had held for almost 4 months now. One evening Eleanor took the notebook down from the top shelf of her bedroom closet. She had not opened it since the night Margaret came. She sat on the edge of the bed and read through it. The entries went back 8 years. There were hundreds of them. Some were short. Some were a paragraph long. Every one of them was dated. Every one of them was true. She read the whole thing beginning to end. Took her almost 2 hours. When she was done, she did not tear the notebook apart. She did not throw it away. The evidence in it was real. She was not going to lie to herself. But she turned to a blank page near the back. She wrote a new date at the top. And then she wrote, Day 93. He fixed the gate. Day 93. He brought wildflowers on Mother's anniversary. Day 93. He learned how I take my tea and never asked again. Day 93. He drove 4 hours to see Robert and came back and did not ask me to be grateful. Day 93. He told Margaret the truth and let her bring it to me herself. Day 93. He noticed the second coffee cup. Day 93. He noticed. She kept writing. She wrote for a long time. The new entries did not undo the old ones. They did not erase the evidence she had been collecting. But they sat in the same notebook now. And the notebook was no longer only one kind of book. She closed it. She put it back on the shelf. She went downstairs. Daniel was on the porch. He was reading. He had a blanket over his knees because the evenings had begun to turn cool. Eleanor sat down in the chair beside him. They sat without speaking for a few minutes. "Daniel," she said. "Yes. You said something to me 93 days ago. You said if you did not keep your promise, I could tell you to leave." He set his book down. He looked at her. "I remember," he said. "I am not telling you to leave," Eleanor said. He was quiet for a moment. "All right," he said. "I do not know what I am telling you," Eleanor said. "I do not know what this is. I am 62 years old and I do not know what this is. But I am not telling you to leave." "All right," he said again. He did not reach for her hand. He did not move toward her. He just sat there, and after a moment he picked up his book again, and Eleanor sat beside him, and the porch was very quiet, and the field beyond the porch was the color of late summer, and somewhere in the grass a cricket started up. She stayed there until it was dark. The next morning Eleanor came down to the kitchen to make her tea. Daniel was already there. He was making coffee. He had put her cup, the cracked one, on the counter for her. She reached for the kettle. Her sleeve caught the teaspoon she had left on the counter. The spoon fell. It bounced once on the floor and slid under the edge of the cabinet. Daniel bent down. He picked it up. He stood up and held it out to her. Eleanor took it. Her hand brushed his. She did not pull away. She held the spoon. He looked at her. "Thank you," she said. The words came out small. Smaller than the words she had said on the day she had broken the cup. But these came out easier, as if her throat had been remembering how to make them. Daniel did not say anything. He just nodded. Eleanor turned to the stove. She set the spoon down beside the cracked cup. She put the kettle on. The water began to warm. Outside the kitchen window, the field was bright in the morning. The cat was sitting at the edge of the porch, waiting for breakfast. Somewhere upstairs, Margaret's mug from the last weekend visit was still drying in the rack. Eleanor stood at the stove and listened to the water heat. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She had not stopped being the woman who had carried the notebook. She would carry it for the rest of her life. The evidence was real, and the years had been long, and there was no version of her story in which the old pages did not exist. But the notebook had new pages in it now, and it was going to have more. She had begun, very quietly, to rebuild the case against herself, and she was very quietly beginning to lose it,